Well, hello, everyone. Well, that's a great start to a show. Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing out there? Are you ready for our Monday night live special? I am so happy and elated to be here. This is the high point of my week. I do look forward to talking with you all and spending time with you all each and every Monday. Part of the reason is I absolutely feel the love in the room, and uh, I know that it's the same for you guys. I am not what I am here without you guys, and I just so appreciate everyone showing up and giving me positive energy, and just the last few months obviously has been a transition period for me, and you guys have been there every step of the way. And I know you're fans of this channel and what I do here, but you're also kind of fans of what I do in general. And that's why I've been posting some more personal stuff, thing on the stand up, and me doing a cover of 1979. Um, but I just want everybody to know too, because I just want people to know that it's not just going to be just like the Ian show and everything surrounding just what I do. This is still going to be a nostalgia channel. I do have a couple more personal things that hopefully pretty soon I'm going to share, but that might be I'm going to do it more rarely. I'm kind of doing it right now because it's happening right now. So I might share with you guys like one more cover, then maybe one more of my comedy skit. I hosted, or my stand up, not comedy skit. I hosted the Jack Mormon comedy in here where I live last Thursday, and it went over really really well. So I'm going to get that. It was videoed. I'm gonna go give the guy a flash drive on Thursday, and then I'm gonna get that back, and then I'm gonna edit it, and I'm gonna put that up as well. And that might be it for a little while, just because I want to make sure that people who jump into the channel who are new, because I'm actually up at like 603 subscribers right now, I want to make sure that they know that this is a nostalgia channel and not necessarily just whatever ENC is doing that day. Anyway, so I just want to make sure that everybody knows that. And we are going to be talking tonight about your favorite retro era. And I say era, not necessarily decade. And because it can be just a few years, or it can be 1 year, or it can be a whole decade, or it can, start in 85 and into 95, whatever retro era that you like the most. But I want to know why. And, if you throw things at me and Thrash, which I'm going to bring on here in just a moment, we'll talk about it too. We'll talk about some of our favorite stuff of that era. And it doesn't have to be Gen X either. It can be later. It can be earlier. I guess those are the only two options, later or earlier. It's like, yeah, my favorite retro era is in the future. Uh, that has to have actually happened. But it has to be a little bit retro too. So like anything like in the last 3 to 5 years, well, we might talk about it, isn't I don't really consider that retro. We're getting now, it's 2 years away from 2000, so the 2000s might be making it into our lineup as well. But mostly it's about growing up Gen X and the nostalgia of growing up Gen X, which is really kind of 70s, 80s, 90s kind of stuff. So, but it's open for discussion here today. And I'm going to bring on with me a guy I nearly left off, and I was wondering where he was. Thrash, how are you doing, my friend?
Why have you forsaken me?
I feel so bad. I was wondering where you were at. I was just ready to text you. And if anybody doesn't, obviously everybody here doesn't know, I didn't send Thrash Pondo the link to get here until just like a minute and a half ago. And I was like, because normally, like a lot of times you'll be on before I will. And I'm like, well, why is he not here? He's normally here. And I'm getting a little worried. Is he going to make it? Is he okay? Did he get in a
I'm
car wreck?
I'm scrolling through both. I have two emails now. I have the Gmail and the Yahoo, and I can't tell if maybe send one or the other. So I'm just and it's got to be here somewhere. And then I'm like, unless
Yeah, I completely spaced off sending it to you, so I totally apologize.
never
Uh,
lost faith in you.
yeah, but
We
I
got through in
was,
the end.
it was like, I literally was like, man, where is he? I wonder where he's gonna be, if he's gonna make
What
it
happened to
tonight.
Bob?
I was worried you were trapped under something heavy and you couldn't get out. You're like something like the bookshelf fell on you, and you're like, yeah, that fake bookshelf fell on you, and you were like, I desperately want to make it here, and I can't because I'm trapped under a bookshelf.
Must reach keyboard. Must.
How did it go with Dave and that retro Lollapalooza?
That went really, really well. We also had, of course, Barry
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Pat,
and
and that
Pat.
went really well. And Dave is the master as the impresario. He did a round robin and asked each of us a question, and we gave impromptu responses, and it went very, very well. Thank you for asking. A lot of positive feedback from our friends. How was your host night for the stand up comedy?
It went super. It went really well. It was probably the best set I've done. I was telling everybody here that I got it filmed. Somebody actually filmed it, and he wants me to bring him a thumbnail drive, and so I'm going to bring him a thumbnail drive hopefully this week, this Thursday, and get it downloaded, and hopefully soon enough to get it out. Out well. I did go to Vegas on, when was it, Saturday, and I got to meet Aaron Weber. And Aaron Weber is a co-host of one of my favorite podcasts called the Nate Land podcast. And that was just amazing to meet him. It was really a step in the right direction. I wrote a letter to Nate Land podcast just telling him thank you. If people don't know, Nate Bargatze is probably my all-time favorite stand-up comedian. But Aaron did great. I mean, if you like comedy, if you're out there and you like comedy, which is weird because we're going to talk about this next week as well. But if you like comedy, look up Aaron Weber, look up Nate Bargatze. Very funny. Dusty Slay as well. Very funny, clean comedians. And so it was a step in the right direction. I mean, he was great. It was really funny. I gave a letter to a handwritten letter to him, thanking him, and to get it back to the Nate Land podcast. And he said he'd drop it off. He was so gracious to me. He was so nice. I bought one of his T-shirts, and what else happened? Oh yeah, he let me tell some of my stupid jokes to him. I said, I go, let me tell about three of them. And there are people behind me. I told two, and then a friend of mine also showed up, and he was in the last person in line. So I waited for him, and I said, "Can I tell you one more joke?" He's like, "Sure." And so I got to tell him one more joke, and he laughed at all of them, and he seemed to be genuine laughs. I think they're pretty funny jokes myself. And hopefully he'll get that letter back to Nate. And one of the things is I said thank you to Nate because not only was he my favorite comedian, he was probably my wife's favorite comedian too. And near the end, we would just cycle through his specials. We would just kind of listen to him to kind of take our mind off things. So we would just, um, listen to him over and over again. And so it is a very special place in my heart for Nate Bargatze and that whole crew over there. And it is my dream. I just thought about this today. I thought, okay, so I mean, and nothing would ever take away from what I'm doing here because I do this during the day. I mean, this is the best thing I got going for me. But I mean, if I could wave a magic wand, I would move to Tennessee and try to get into the open mic scene there and get hooked up with Nate, open for him and that crowd.
I thought it was because all your exes live in Texas,
No,
and
I don't know
that's
what
why
that
you would reside in Tennessee.
is. That what he says?
That's a song.
I
He
know, but I don't. Is that what he says? And that's why I hang my hat in Tennessee.
Tennessee, exactly.
Right, right. Yeah. I've been mulling it over, praying about it. Um, some things have come up, some signs have come up that perhaps that is going to be the next step. But I have to wait. I have to wait to see if some things go through. I think that everybody knows I am waiting on a business loan, trying to get my credit up there so I can get this business loan. And if I get this business loan, I am going to quit my job, and I am going to, or I'm going to fade out of it, or whatever. I don't know. I'm going to quit, and I'm going to put my eggs in basket YouTube, basically. So I will be producing more videos, on a more consistent basis and stuff like that. So because that's really what I want to do. And then, just kind of believe in myself, and do not just make more videos, but put more into advertising for retro cereal, and move to Tennessee. That's what I'll do. But I gotta wait till like probably after the holidays before a big move like that's going to come through. But I've been, praying, Lord, get me out of this place. I'm done here. I love it, but I also don't love it. All
You
right.
know, I
Go.
did I
Oh,
freeze already? I
you
froze
froze
already.
already. It's
Already?
okay. It's
Well,
okay.
we'll press on with me frozen. But I got to tell you, I came up with a great pickup line involving Tennessee. It goes
Okay.
like this: Are you from Tennessee? Because you're hot. Get it?
Because you're a
Yeah,
hot.
yeah.
You're hot, or you're a
Well,
hot.
well, the actual line is, "Are you from Tennessee? Because you're the only 10 I see." But everyone knows that one. So
Oh.
I went off the rails on it, and I'm sorry. It was a horrible attempt at humor, and this is why I don't become a stand-up comedian like you. Shall we say some hellos?
Yeah, well, let's get to that. That's a great idea. Let's get into the substance of the show, shall we?
No, I wonder even if frozen. I wonder if I can post. No, yes, I can.
All right.
Wajimine says hello, Keith.
Well, hello, Keith, and hello, Wajimine. Welcome to the program,
Zublex in the house says hello, Waj.
and hello, Superplex.
And Keith E says hello, hello.
Hello, hello, Keith.
And Lens returns the favor as well, saying hi, Keith.
Right? Hi, Lance. Glad you could be here.
Tom decides to cover his bases and says hello, everybody, or everyone in this
Well,
case.
everyone, hello to you. Back from all of us to all of you, Tom. Thank you for being here and joining us on this program.
And Tom the Hungry Jerk says hello, people.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, people. We're people, right? All right.
Indeed,
Hello. I think
indeed
last
we
time I
are.
checked. So, all right.
Trey Thoros Myers says hi, everyone.
Hi, Tracy. How are you?
And Danny Staten with his epic greetings from South Carolina.
Greetings, Danny.
And John Doe says hand emoji to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Hi, hi. Yeah. Sorry. I was a little late on that one. Hi back, by the way. Okay.
And number one dude with his epic Rottweiler puppy says hello, ENC and Thrash.
Hello, and I love that picture of your dog. I don't know. So my dog's a pit, but but she's not fully pit, and I don't know what else she has in her. It looks a little Rottweiler ish as well, but I can't tell. We're gonna get a 23 and me for my dog.
And I believe that's it for the hellos. But I want to start with Danny Staten here. He says, I picked the 70s. Galactica Croft stuff. $6 million men. The list goes on.
Yeah, yeah. The 70s for me are definitely where nostalgia starts. Of course, I was born in the early 70s, and well, mid to early 70s, 73. And of course, my earliest memories are all in the 70s, and big parts of who I am, are the 70s. $6 million man, great, scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. The whole face falling off with the robot,
Maskatron.
yeah, the robot thing underneath it. And I had to I was afraid everybody was. I saw it and I thought everybody was a robot, and I freaked out. And my grandmother had to have me pull on her face to make sure that she wasn't a robot. She's like, "No, I'm not a robot. Look, look." And apparently they did this. I found this out. Apparently they did this when my mom wasn't present, and so then my mom would like come back, and I was freaking out. and like she's like, "What the heck did you make him watch?" So she was, you know, definitely upset about that. Thrash, you talk about the 70s for a bit.
Well, and I'm glad he mentioned the 70s because I wanted to ask you something. Are we doing the most nostalgic period in our lives or just the most retro? Because I know retro has become synonymous with nostalgia, but technically it could just be things you like looking back on or like periods you like reveling in.
Hmm.
Like, for example, I love elements of the 60s that I either was a toddler for or it was before I was born altogether. So, could one actually talk about a retro period before their own point of existence? Would you consider that, or are you really looking for things we're most nostalgic about?
You know, I think it's both. I mean, I'm going to leave both doors open to that one. And you'd bring out a really good point. I mean, yeah, I get it. Yeah, retro, because you could not be part of a decade and still get into retro stuff. But you can't be nostalgic about it. And so, with that, very good distinction, I will say both doors are open to that. But with that said, let's talk about the 70s because
Well,
he brought
I
it
got to
up.
tell you, there were some really amazing things that happened in the 70s. Of course, that was way before your time, Sonny. I remember, like, there was some amazing TV shows that came out at that time. Welcome Back, Cotter, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley. There was some amazing movies. Star Wars came out, which was a game changer.
Yeah.
Um, the music in that period was absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Even the one hit wonders were amazing, although Kansas wasn't a one hit wonder. They had two hits, but you know what I'm saying. The problem, and of course, you had the bicentennial, you had the tall ships. It was just a really amazing time. The problem for it, for me, is there was some very negative things going on in my own family at that time.
Mhm.
So it's hard for me to get nostalgic about it because, I mean, not that there weren't good times, but it's always peppered with these really sort of sad elements that keep me from really getting like a warm, fuzzy feeling about the time period. Although, that being said, I can certainly see how, as far as a retro decade goes, the 70s would be right up there with the best of them because there was plenty to look back on, to
Mm.
remember and say, "Oh, that was great. This was great." One of the things I was talking about just the other day was Paul Lynn's 1976 Halloween special, which not only did I fall in love with, anybody who saw it and loves it, and it's actually right here on YouTube. You can actually see it to this day.
Oh, okay. Right on.
Hmm.
Right on.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, I get that. I get that it's hard to be nostalgic about, you know, feel good about the past. I think is basic definition of nostalgia about a decade where tragic things were happening as well. I get that. I mean, I totally understand that. That kind of happens for me, like in every decade, at least at some point. But with the 70s too, there's probably one thing that came out in the 70s that has shaped my existence in in an impactful way, and that was the premiere of Star Wars.
Hmm.
I mean, the whole trajectory of my life would be different if it wasn't for Star Wars. I mean, everything about Star Wars influenced me, what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be. You know, emulating the Jedi basically is kind of the idea there, and just the entertainment of sci-fi really hit me at that time. So, and then sci-fi in general. Um, and coming out during that time was a big deal for me. You know, did Buck Rogers come out in the 70s? That's
Well, it actually came out in the 30s.
yeah. I
The
mean the
TV show.
movie. I mean the
Um,
movie. Yeah.
that's on the cusp. I want to say 1980. It could have been late 79, but I'm going to call it 1980.
I
Um,
yeah yeah.
because I think I was in middle school at the time. It may have been late 70s. I will tell you one thing though. The TV series, which is better known than the actual movie. That was definitely early '80s because, like I said, I remember watching that when I was in middle school. But definitely on the cusp. Oh, there's one more thing. Mr. Led is in the house.
Hey, Mr. Led.
Mr. Led has been working through some health issues. Says he's otherwise okay, but he, at great inner strength, has decided to join us tonight. And I really want to read his uh, hello here into the record.
Yes, very well. Thank you, Mr. Led, for joining us.
Um, do we want to continue in the '70s, or should we look into another?
Well, if somebody else says some things about the 70s, let's just go on down because I'm sure that the people are going to bring up different aspects of the 70s that we can talk about.
We certainly will. I'm trying to go back to where I was. Um, I know someone brought up the early '80s, the MTV generation,
Right.
and I think that's an excellent one as well.
Yeah. I mean, 80s is probably where I get most nostalgic. I mean, I mean, it's like this balancing act. I mean, I've got every decade doing different things that, that I look back on with nostalgic, um, with nostalgia at different things. And I mean, the 80s, the early 80s, of course, you had the premiere of MTV in 81. And I really think that the 80s became what the 80s was in 81. I mean, I think there's still kind of a holdover from what the 70s were into, at least that first year. That always kind of seems to be the way it is. It doesn't really like transfer over. Like you're not really in a new decade until like 82, 92, 91, 92.
Well, I don't. Well, oh, you finish up because I have some thoughts on that. Continue.
Oh, go ahead. That was it.
Oh, really?
You're gonna rescue me. You're gonna,
Well,
even if you disagree with me, you're gonna rescue me.
I thank you. Glad to be of service. I found 1980 to be one of the most distinct decade changes in my memory. And you are right. Like, for example, um, the early '70s were really the '60s, and the early '60s were really the '50s. But the '80s, it was almost like we knew that decade was coming, and it was like cha-ching. We're going to
Yeah.
change right here and there. The big thing, of course, the Reagan election. Reagan was really a game changer in American politics, and you could feel the change that was before Reagan and after. But not just that; it's like the closing changed very, very, very dramatically. It's the different styles of music. Um, there was actually a pop singer who actually sang about that, about how this is the '80s, and it's going to be different than all the other decades. And I wish I could remember it. But
Hmm.
um, we were just excited about a new decade. And I don't know if it's because the '70s ended on such a somber note in many aspects, not in all aspects, but many aspects. But I think the '80s really were the kickoff of the good decade. And let's face facts, we haven't had a decade as good since, and you can take that to the
Yeah.
bank.
Yeah. I don't know. I get it. I get it. I am really trapped between the 80s and 90s for me. Um, uh, it's just it's so difficult for me. So let's go ahead.
Tom the Hendrick says, "Ah, '90s country, some good stuff."
Yeah, that's when 90s, I mean, in 90s country went mainstream.
Mm.
And as a genre in general, I was not a country music fan. I just wasn't. But in the 90s, they had some hits that I actually really liked. I know that so I'm not somebody who's inside, I'm all countryed out and all this stuff, so I would know anything about it. But quite honestly, I could listen to some Garth Brooks. Okay, I mean, yeah, I might be some diehard country fans out there might think I'm a total lameo for that or whatever. But I was in 90, just about right when I got married. In 94, I worked for a place that was like a country style restaurant. It was called Frontier. It was no, it was called Pioneer Pies, I think it was called. And they played country music. Now, listen, if it doesn't matter what kind of music you don't like, um, if somebody plays it all the time and you're forced to listen to it, you'll find something you like about it. And there was one song that I actually loved, and I always dreamed that if I ever was a famous musician, which is what I wanted to be more than anything in the '90s, um, I uh, I wanted to play. I wanted to do a remake of this song, and it's Dan Seal's "They Rage On," and I think that is just one of the best songs out there. But I mean, in the '80s too, like before I kind of got into this metalhead stuff that dominated me in the '80s. I was into Kenny Rogers and stuff like that. But yeah, any thoughts on country in the '90s for you, my friend?
Must confess, never became a fan of country music. The closest I ever got was some of the whole like rockabilly sounds in the '80s. How could you not love Juice Newton? Or 38 Special, that type of thing. And most of you true country fans don't consider that country music. But for me, that's the closest I got. I was in the '90s. I was more into, say, the grunge sound or the alternative, the underground. The '90s for me certainly had its moments. In fact, I remember you and I were talking ages ago. I can't remember who our guest was, but I said the '80s was a decade we threw the book out the window. The '90s was a decade we were wondering where not having the book was going to take us.
Yeah, yeah, for
There was
sure.
there was some really amazing times in the '90s. Sadly, it never really went anywhere. Sadly, we spun our wheels just a little too much, I think. Um, did we squander our potential? Well, what generation doesn't? But there were certainly some good moments in the '90s.
Yeah.
To me, an elephant in the room. To me, things really didn't start going downhill until the 21st century. Wasn't crazy about the single digits. Didn't particularly like the teens, and the less said about the 2020s, the better. That's why I think in not to take umbrage with what you said, but as far as like 3 years ago, being nostalgic about, considering 3 years ago was pre-virus, I think yes, I think we can get nostalgic about 2019 quite easily. Remember the remember the good old days when there was toilet
Yeah,
paper?
I guess I kind of overlooked that. I guess and this is that point that you made between distinguishing between retro and nostalgia, and I guess you could be nostalgic about something that happened yesterday, technically. But I was thinking in terms, I was kind of smashing those terms together,
Gotcha. I'm
and
with you.
and I was thinking, in terms of you can't really be retro, I guess, in a way, because you could say, hey, I'm not wearing a mask, isn't that so 2019 of
Mean
me?
of me.
Well, the yeah, I mean, obviously, the grunge era, the alternative rock era. He asked specifically about country, and so I
Mhm.
was kind of trying to capitalize on that. But of
I'm
course,
with you.
I mean, that's where I was, and why the '90s were so important to me. Is that's where I found myself. I really found self definition in the '90s in a lot of ways, um, and not so much in the '80s. And so the '90s, it's like the '80s holds a special part for me too, because I was just kind of breaking away from my parents.
Mhm.
It was that was the era in which, as I've said before, you grow up, listening to what your parents listen to, and at some point somebody brings you a tape or an album, or you're at a friend's house and they bring you, and they have new music that your parents don't listen to. Well, that happened to me in the '80s, of course. And then that was, my whole metal thing, getting into heavy metal. And it started with Iron Maiden, eventually went to Motley Crue, and that whole thing. So I definitely have fond memories of the '80s, with friends, and just kind of burgeoning, getting into trouble and stuff like that. But I, yeah, it felt like a decade for me of trying to be somebody I wasn't. And the
Uh,
'90s was okay. This is what I really resonate with, considerably, especially with Nirvana. And the whole thing with Nirvana was that it's okay to be a loser. You don't have to be. Heavy metal was all about excess uh, and theatrics and stuff like that, and it was really about ruling. You know, you're the best, and you did a and I felt that that was a mask I was putting on, and I was just faking it. And then when the whole grunge era hit and the alternative era hit, I really resonated with that. I'm like, I'm really not that person. I am really more this person because it never worked out. You know, I just would pretend that it's okay that people didn't like me. And Kurt Cobain came along and redefined it and said, you don't have to pretend that people don't like you. It's okay if people don't like you. Just accept that. And the movie, that movie with Christian Slater, Pump Up the Volume, kind of did that
Oh
too.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and it was like this cacophony of music and movies that were like you know, like it made the loser kind of cool too. It kind of flipped the script a bit, but at the same time, before that script got flipped, you had to be okay with who you are as a person. And I realized, oh, I'm not the guy who's got a million girlfriends and, you know, a million sexual conquests and all the drugs that I want, and I'm liked by everybody. I wasn't liked by everybody. I was disliked by most people in the '80s, and it just it wears a real resonance with me in that early '90s era. That's why the '90s probably maybe 2 points over the '80s
Hmm.
for me personally. But anyway, I bloviated there long enough. What do we got as far as
John Doe brings up a good one. November 3rd will be the day in 1954 was the first release of Godzilla King of the Monsters. A Godzilla Fest is taking place.
Godzilla? Man, love it. I love Godzilla, except for the Matthew Broderick version of it, right?
You know, it's so funny. I was just talking about that one. If that movie had been called Giant Iguana Eats New York, I could have fun with it. They called it Godzilla, and it was not. And that's why I was never able. The only good thing about that one is Jean Reno as the French intelligence officer. I thought he stole the movie, but unfortunately, he had a very small part in it. It just, yeah, no, I for me, I'm old school Japanese Toho Studios Godzilla. Couldn't agree with you
Right.
more.
Well, we should ask Tug to do a theater. What's it called? What does he call it?
Public domain theater.
Public domain theater on Godzilla.
Toho would shut him down. There was actually, this is a true story.
Oh,
There
it's
was,
not public domain.
oh no, no, Toho has almost vindictive rights to it. There was a YouTuber who had a channel. It was called like Godzilla Lover or something like that. Toho got wind of it. They made him change his name. Godzilla's copywritten. He couldn't use it as a
Oh
channel.
wow, wow,
They made him
crazy.
change it. Just the channel. And he goes, but I'm a channel extolling the virtues of Godzilla. You're using a copywritten name. Forget it. I believe Fat Samurai was the one who told me that story.
Oh wow,
But
crazy.
it just that shows you what the whole Toho has. It would be nice though. Dave Flory in the house. Hey Dave.
Hey Dave, how you doing, buddy?
He says I would love to have been a teen in the 50s, malt shops and drive-in movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of fun. We're getting into the modern era where kids have cars. You know what I mean? It's not
Mhm.
just necessarily something your parents have, but something that teenagers start having as well. That's an interesting thought. I mean, I don't really know too much about it, but if you look at the '40s, this is just what I'm thinking. And Thrash, you please, if I'm saying it wrong, let me know.
I will.
But okay, but I'm looking at the '40s, and I would think like the '40s is more like only your parents had a car. And if you're a teenager, you don't really have one. But in the '50s, you start by the '60s, of course. But by the '50s, like you're a teenager, you can get a car.
Mhm, mhm.
At least it becomes more. I'm sure that there are exceptions to that. I'm sure that there were teenagers in the '40s who had cars, but it just seems like the '40s was an era where I don't know where the '50s was an era where teens had more freedom.
Yes,
Uh,
very much so.
yeah,
Very much so. The you can't underestimate the importance of the Second World War in the evolution of the 1940s.
exactly.
Um, And of course, during the war, everything was about winning the war. But then afterwards, it was this sort of shift in the socioeconomic base of the country. Women decided they didn't necessarily want to go back to work. Go back, should I say, go back to the homes. A lot of them had gotten jobs during the war and wanted to keep them. So that sort of decentralized the American family for good or bad. But teenagers were just starting to get freedoms that they literally hadn't had before. And that sort of blossomed in the 50s. And the 50s was really a golden age for young people based on the fact I wasn't there. I'm just going back from my studies as a historian. And it's really hard not to get fascinated by it. I mean, of course, that was the whole premise behind Happy Days and a host of other shows as well, was the fact that it was this sort of golden age for the American teenager, and many people missed that who had experienced it firsthand.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Well said. Yeah, those malt shops were great. That's when you put
Yeah,
that's when you actually had malts.
malt,
They
actually
put
malt,
malt in your shake.
and
Now
I
it's
believe, yeah,
now if somebody put malt in your shake, you'd be like, "What's this in my
this,
shake?"
which I believe was invented because they couldn't keep fresh milk in the field in World War II, so they were issuing the soldiers malt because it had similar nutritional value.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah,
Hitting us with
that's
some knowledge, man.
yeah. I try. I try.
We're
I'm a
gonna
World War
we're gonna
II buff.
Google that and find out you were totally wrong. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Go on.
Cindy D in the house.
Hi,
Hey,
Cindy.
Cindy.
How you doing?
And she says, I do love the late 70s disco era. Good music despite the disco sucks crap. Disco never left. It's called Dance Now. Donna Summer was the 70s Beyonce.
Yeah, I mean, is she the one that sang "I Will Survive" or no? Was that somebody
Hmm.
else?
That
Oh,
was Donna Summer.
yeah. I mean, "I Will Survive." I mean, that was picked up by the band Cake, made re popular again. I love that song. Um, I would put it probably a little bit different. I would say dance music spun out disco and other forms of dance music after it died. But I mean, I would say that probably in later dance music, that there are still elements of disco that are involved. Although I don't know if I could say there's a direct succession, if that makes sense. Like
Perfect sense, actually, yes.
yeah, like this gave birth to this, which gave birth to this, which was my whole argument against grunge being heavy metal. I was like, yeah, there are elements of metal, but metal it's not a subgenre of metal. That's kind of where I put my foot down on the whole issue. Go ahead.
Oh, and Danny Staten says Buck Rogers' premiere was March 30th, 1979. Thank you, I was close, but
Yeah. I was gonna say I remember seeing it when I was still in California. So I definitely thought it was in the 70s. But I could be wrong, because we moved to Utah in 1980. And so but it wasn't like we moved like January 1st, 1980. So I was still one, it could have still been in the 80s. But I know that I saw it in California with my mother. We saw it
sure.
twice actually, in one night.
Really?
Yeah.
In one
Because,
night?
yep.
That's
Yeah. We went in. Yeah.
that's awesome.
John.
John Collins in the house.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
John Collins says, hello, guys, and everyone. I apologize for being late. I was getting some work done on my foot. The poor guy has an infection
Oh, I'm
in,
sorry, John.
of all places, his left foot.
Oh no.
He goes on to say, Bob, are we legally allowed to ask Ian how he is specifically related to the legend George Carlin?
Yeah, I mean, he was my dad's first cousin. I don't think that's anything that would be I don't know, hidden
Oh,
or
yeah.
illegal or
No.
whatever.
I think he just didn't want to like pry. Is what he was trying to say.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
look who else is here. Emily
Hi
Miller in the
Emily.
house.
Hi Emily. Glad to see you.
Hey y'all, sorry I'm late.
It's all right. Glad you could make it.
Let's see what else we get going on down here. Oh, Lance Javen says, Cindy, let's go down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher.
Yeah. Right, right, right. Did you like disco at all or no? Or were you not a fan?
I was afraid you'd ask. I loved disco in the sense that I loved Saturday Night Fever.
Oh,
Like
okay.
I loved the culture of disco because it was just so huge in the late '70s. I never particularly liked the music or the dance. I
Mm.
just liked the fact that it was like every place. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right, right.
When disco died, I wasn't overly disappointed. I'm
You weren't
afraid.
sad about it. You
No, I
weren't sad
wasn't.
about it.
Oh,
This disco was one of
yes, I
the
am, Emily. Sorry.
yeah, yeah, he's frozen. We decided to keep him frozen because he's doing such a good job reading the comments. I didn't want him to drop out and then have to come back in. But if it bugs everybody, I'll
How about I give it a shot? I'll give it one try and come right back.
all right, and I'll talk about disco for a minute.
All right, sure. Bye, guys.
So, yeah, let me remove this. Sorry. So, disco was something that my mom listened to, and of course, then when disco, when I started listening to music on my own, then disco was something I didn't really listen to that much. So disco and I like it now a little bit more. I can listen to it outside it's the context of which I first heard it. And I feel that's a true with a lot of genres of music. So, for example, there was a while there where I really didn't like heavy metal because one of the things grunge did was make it so you weren't supposed to like heavy metal. It was the anti heavy metal. And so when I went to grunge, I tried to pretend like I didn't like heavy metal. And I really didn't. For a long time I didn't. But now I can listen to heavy metal kind of outside of that cultural milieu, and I really like it now. I like a lot of it, and I listen to metal when I run. I mean, I just have to listen to something fast, heavy music, fast, that keeps my steps up and stuff like that. So I do like heavy metal now, and I feel the same way about disco. I like disco now because I'm not listening. It's not my mom's music anymore, if that makes sense. I can just kind of go back and listen to it. All right, Thrash Pondo is. I don't see his. There we go. His picture's coming back on. All right, Thrash. Yay, yay, you're here and you're live. Can you say something?
Something.
Okay. Ah, ah, ah,
Thank you
ah.
for all waiting patiently. Oh, hey, we have a new person. I just noticed here. We have Brooklyn Babe 78 says boogie shoes and jive talking. Great.
Yes, Boogie Shoes and Jive Talking. Is that a 70s thing?
Those are two songs from the disco era. Boogie shoes. I used to know who did both of those. Jive Talking was Andy Gibb. Boogie Shoes, I
Oh.
believe, was the same guy who did Shake That Booty. I believe. Please correct me if
Mm.
I'm wrong. But thank you, Brooklyn Babe, and welcome
W-
to the
Well,
party.
yeah, I was thinking more of the actual language, jive talk. Yeah,
Well, that was
I
from the
was.
40s.
Oh, was it? That's okay. That's why I asked. I was just like, because I thought
Yeah, that's World
jive.
War II era.
Oh, it is really.
Yeah,
It made
that's
it
what.
into airplane though. Made it all the way up into
Oh,
1980.
oh, it sure did. But it was the cool, slick thing the youth were doing back during World War II.
Hmm. Interesting. Very interesting.
Probably even before that. Probably even in the 30s. Well,
Mhm.
you know what jive means, right?
Oh, is it a slang for sex?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't
Yes,
know. I know rock and roll is too.
they both were.
Yeah,
They both were, yeah. I'm trying to see where I left off now that I'm back on, but I'm trying to
yeah.
do it in such a way as to not bounce myself back out again. Wow, I went all the way back up to the top.
Oh well.
You guys
Just
have made a
find
lot of comments.
just find your way back down there. We'll give it some
I
time
will.
here.
I
Everybody
will.
loves us enough to wait here.
Ooh,
Okay.
Brooklyn Babe 78. You are a music buff. I can tell just by your last two posts.
Right on, Brooklyn Babe. Glad you're in the house.
She likes Joe Jackson, Elvis Costello, and Nick Lowe, and Lena Lovich. I hope I said her name right. But
Yeah. Yeah. Elvis Costello, probably out of all those, is the one that I would know the most. Obviously, he was. either some people consider him punk, some people consider him punk adjacent. He did have what do you think? You think he's punk or punk adjacent?
I would say punk adjacent because a lot of the stuff he did sounded almost bluesy to me.
Yeah.
You know,
He certainly
um,
had that punk ethos though, that punk attitude,
well, you remember
you
Lux
know?
and Terry used to say that he actually was punkabilly.
Oh,
I
okay.
I would say that Elvis Costello would be punk lounge act. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great
And
way to put it. That's a great way to put it.
so punk
Probably
adjacent,
even
yeah.
probably even early alternative because I mean, if you give the definition of alternative, it's like you can't define it. It's one foot in one world and then another foot in maybe two or three different worlds.
Just a whole different sound.
It
And
was.
Joe Daxon, I actually just found my old Stepping Out album the other day when I was going through some stuff in my den. I actually have a Joe Jackson album. He actually, he's one of those people where I always wonder why he didn't do more because he had this meteoric rise and then he just sort of. And of course, Nick Lowe, the only song I'm racking my brains, and I know he had more than one, but the only song by Nick Lowe I can think of off the top of my head is, um, didn't he do well? He did was
I don't
Andre the
know.
Bro
Look, I'm
yeah.
a dummy. Dummy. I mean, I know a lot about music too, but I mean, you're throwing names out there. I've heard Joe Jackson, of course, but I have not ever heard
Well,
of Nick Lowe.
Nick Lowe goes,
And
and so it goes, and so it goes, and so it goes, and so it goes. And I believe he also did that song "Good Girls Don't."
oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right. Maybe
and
I
Lenny Lovitch. I loved a song by her, and I can't think of it at the top of my head. Maybe if you hum a few bars, I'll think of it. But anyway, all great stuff, and thank
yeah.
you for playing.
Well, it's always interesting when somebody throws some names at me I've not heard because I know so many bands and so many bands that other people don't know as well that it's crazy. I mean, when I talk about like bands that nobody knows about and stuff like that, I can just start rattling off, I'm sure, bands that people have not really heard about or that are underground that should have been more popular. And so I'm always impressed when somebody but I feel like I should have known these people, though. I feel like I'm a little bit of a dummy on this question here, so or in this comment here.
You know what you would have heard them.
Like, who's Elvis Presley? I haven't heard of him. What?
Big Guys 45s is doing a thing on some old new wave compilations. You would have
Oh,
seen a lot of them on new wave compilation albums.
okay.
And I'm going to try this. Correct me if I get it wrong this time because I think I almost had it. Spero Dio.
It's Sparrow Deo one.
Well, but I was just trying to get the word right. Spero Deo one says, I lived in skates. Apparently, he was big into the roller discos of
Yeah,
the early '80s.
it's a female. That's my stepdaughter.
It is.
Yeah, it
So
is.
you had an inside track the whole time.
I did. That's why it actually even took me a minute to recognize it for I mean the last time that she was on. So it's Sparrow. Yeah, yeah, skates. How about skates?
I
Did you
tried
like
skating once.
Oh no.
Once.
Really only
My
one time?
well, you know what happened the one time? My foot did this. I
Oh,
did it. It did a 180, and I was on crutches for 2 weeks.
were you skating in them or were you doing something else?
I was skating, but no, we had me and some friends that we were like doing the 8th grade trip, and the last night there, we all went to a roller rink disco, and they convinced me to go out on the roller rink, and I think I went east instead when I should have gone west, and my foot went, and I was on crutches for
Oh,
2 weeks. So that
yikes.
that was my swan song. I just
Uh,
don't have the skater physique, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know. I had a similar experience on a skateboard. And I mean I was skateboarding all the time and then I wiped out really hard one time. And since that time that I wiped out, I did never ride skateboard the same. I tried to, but that fear was so in my brain that it was really hard for me. But I lived on skates as well. I mean, the roller skating rink, I would go every Friday and most every Saturday, every Friday for sure, for 4 hours. And we had a skate rink where I grew up, and I would go and had a girlfriend and everything, and she could skate backwards, so we could do the couple skate, and and it was so cool. I loved skating. That was awesome. And they played. I think I told this story before because Walk This Way came out, the Run DMC version,
Hmm.
and I went in there and I just learned that there was an older version by Aerosmith. I didn't know this, I mean, yeah, I'm what, 10, whatever. And so I go into the DJ place where he's spinning the 45s on there. And I say, "Hey, do you have Walk This Way by Aerosmith?" And I don't know. I still can't get a read on it. I can't get a read if he was like upset with me or he was impressed or whatever. It was difficult to read. At the time I thought he was impressed, but he said something like, he's like, "This place opened in 84." He goes, "We don't have any music before 1984 here." So I was just like, "Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Excuse." Well, I didn't say anything. I just, uh, you know, just skated out. All right.
Emily Miller says it's alive.
It's alive.
Alive. Now I'm
Yeah.
assuming she's referring to the Larry Cohen horror movie, not the Larry Buchanan film from the '60s.
I don't know.
If she's talking about Larry Cohen, I was just doing something on The Stuff, which was his indictment of American consumerism in a sort of Hitchcockian horror sort of way. So either way, Emily, I'm very impressed. Oh, and both Brooklyn Babes and Lance Chafin says Casey and the Sunshine Band did the song we were talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The one I couldn't think of the name of or the artist of it, let's just say.
Well, at least we got the artist right now.
Well, yes, we do. Well, we had the song title. We just didn't
It-
have the artist. Yeah.
right.
Skipping down, a lot of people are referring specifically to music. Oh,
Let's hear it. Let's get it. Let's get it in here. I want to riff on
number one
some.
dude. It was Barbara Billingsley who spoke jive in the movie Airplane.
Yeah,
Barbara Billingsley from yeah,
that was
uh,
fun. Barb
yeah,
from Leave It to Beaver.
yes.
Yes, I remember that. I mean, that was one of the funniest parts of the show where she's able to speak jazz. She's like, "My mama didn't raise no dummy. I jugged this girl's rap." It's like, "Oh, stupid is, stupid does." She walks away saying something like that. That was the best, one of the best parts in Airplane. Loved that show.
Oh, Les Javin has a good one. Wall of Voodoo.
Wall of Voodoo. Is that a new wave band?
Um, you could say they were new wave. They were sort of early to mid '80s. Their best known hit, in my recollection, was Mexican Radio. But
Mm.
they did another song called "The Far Side of Crazy," which is basically a song about a serial killer from the serial killer's point of view. I think is the easiest way to put it. But they had some very intense sort of underground hits.
You should do one of your retro hits on that one.
Oh, a
Where
creepy classic.
Yeah, creepy
That would make
classic.
a great. That would make a
Mm.
great creepy classic. Nelly. Oh, Lance Chafin says "It's Alive," the Killer Baby movie. Yes, that was the Larry Cohen classic. That's the one where it shows the cradle and the claw just kind of comes out. Well, you don't do horror movies. I'm so sorry, I
No,
forget.
no, but you can talk about it. I don't
Uh,
care. It's all good.
uh, but yeah, that was and that was the one I was assuming that she was referring to. I think we've actually caught up.
Well,
So
let's do
I'll go
this one
back.
here.
Let's. Cindy D says loved early '80s rock. Um, I assume she means REO Speedwagon,
Yeah.
Styx, Loverboy, Foreigner, Keep on Loving You.
This is very interesting because you're bringing up a subgenre of rock known as arena rock. And it was a big deal. And I think Journey kind of led the way on that. Journey started out kind of almost as a prog rock band. But then when they dumped their old singer, and got Stephen Perry in there, they really became quite a different band. That's where we know all their classics and stuff like that. I don't even know if too many people would even recognize a Journey song before Stephen Perry, between Stephen before Stephen Perry joined. Yeah, myself included either. I just know about it. But um, And in the late 70s, they were just like they were the beginning of what would be called arena rock. And in the 80s, they took a real turn because they dumped a bunch of their, on Stephen Perry's request, they dumped a bunch of their members and they went a little more synthesizer in some of their songs. And that is the era too that you're talking about. REO Speedwagon Sticks a little earlier. Loverboy for sure. Foreigner, both. And yeah, and Foreigner, as you've mentioned before, thrash is one of those bands that doesn't have any original members.
I love how you put it. With they're actually a cover band of themselves.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, they're a cover band of themselves.
Uh,
Loverboy, everybody's working for the weekend. Love that song. But yeah, that and REO is in the REO Speedwagon. Did they do Sister Christian?
no, REO Speedwagon did that song. I'm gonna keep on loving you.
Oh, okay. All right.
And if I remember correctly, they're actually named after a type of fire truck. The REO Speedwagon was a type of cutting edge uh, fire station uh, technology back in the day.
Who did Sister Christian?
Sister Christian was Night Ranger.
That's right, Night Ranger. That's another band that be thrown into that subgenre of band. Kind of feel good music. You know, you could skate to your girlfriend with on the on the skating floor. All right.
Oh,
Well, enough of that one. Unless you wanted to say something about those.
oh no, those were good, but I think you hit the nail on the head. I do want to say something about this one. This one sounds like a blast. John Collins says, "Bob, could you discuss the song 'The Night Chicago Died'?" That's one of my creepy classics.
Oh, okay. Well, discuss.
Well, actually, not as a creepy classic. I have to say, if there's any fans of oh, I'm so embarrassed I can't think of the gentleman's name now. He's been a comedian actor for years. Drew Carey. Drew Carey. There we go.
Mm.
On the Drew Carey show, they had one of the funniest things I've seen in television history. He decides he wants to bring his high school band back together because the high school band teacher had recently died, and as a nostalgia thing, as a support thing, they're going to come back together and do one song for her. He later confesses that he had a brief affair with her, so it's a personal matter for him. But anyway, they're all getting together and they're trying to think of what a touching tribute song would be. And Oswald, mental giant that he is, says, "Why don't we just do The Night Chicago Died and substitute Mrs. Haversham's name for the word Chicago?" And my spirit left my body. I was laughing so hard I couldn't breathe because I instantly sang the song from beginning to end in my head doing that. And then somebody said, "About 100 cups a day." I heard my mom cry and I couldn't breathe. I was dying. So,
Oh,
John, thank you for bringing a very, very, very humorous memory back to me. That I think is a great retro moment right there. That episode of the Drew Carey Show,
yeah.
um,
Drew
which it
Carey
seems
show's a great show too, by the way. You know,
it
I'm gonna
really
go back
was.
and and rewatch those along with Just Shoot Me. I've been rewatching Just Shoot Me. Those are two good shows. The Drew Carey and Just Shoot Me.
Oh, Danny Staten has a. This is a very good point. Danny Staten
Yeah.
says, "Breaking news: Actor Leslie Jordan passed away." Yes,
Yeah.
rest in
Yeah.
peace, Mr. Jordan.
Feel bad about that one. A lot of great laughs. He was in a lot of shows. A lot of yeah. He did a lot. He did a lot.
He
Mm.
certainly did. He certainly did. Oh, I should probably put my glasses back on. It's a little easier to read that way. Oh, John H in the house says,
John.
"Anticipation makes me think of Heinz ketchup." Do you remember that ad campaign?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I remember it was Joey from Friends. Well, I'm not sure. I know that he was in a Heinz ketchup where he puts the bottle on top of the roof, and then he goes down and he orders a hot dog, and then
Hot
he
dog and shh.
yeah.
But Anticipation by Carly Simon was their jingle for years.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
Yes. And
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know
all right,
that.
so you have learned something new, Grasshopper.
I've learned tons this evening from you. I mean, you pointed out the differences between nostalgia and retro, and I mean, you've made a lot of good points. So,
I do try. I do try, but you've contributed more than I have actually. You have. So I tried to just keep up my end.
I know.
So
No,
like
I'm just kidding.
Zublik says, I think I know who you are referring to, Emily. He was in a Jack's TikTok video. Oh,
Mm.
Mr. Jordan, yes. Apparently he was.
Okay.
And Emily says, Leslie did some really funny videos during lockdown. A lot of people did. In fact, that was one thing I'm surprised you and I didn't talk about more when we were talking about stand-up comedy. Just how many of them tried to carry on, really through the internet, doing YouTube posts like we do, but
Yeah.
doing their comedy sets, and
Yeah.
how a
It's
lot of them, kept the
it's
exposure that way.
it's tough. It's actually really tough. Uh, I'm doing a Zoom show with Dat Fan on Sundays. And I don't know how you can watch it. I need to find out but uh, doing a room with Zoom, and you know who Dat Fan is or no?
I'm racking my brains. There's a bell ringing in my head,
So
but it's probably the tinnitus.
he was the first he was the first uh comedian to win that the last comic standing.
I do remember. I watched that season. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
season 1 of Last Comic Standing, Dat Fan was the winner. And I've been doing a room with him actually 2 Sundays in a row now.
Really?
So, yeah, yeah, and it's a collection of about 15 comedians, and we all get like well, the first time I went on, I got 4 minutes, and I was behind Dat Fan. And this Sunday he put me on first. Well, he put me on before him, and he gave me 7 minutes. So he must have liked what I did. So that was really cool. I was really excited to be able to do that.
Keith E says, Thrash, I think this is the most current you and Ian have ever been on the feed down here. Is that good or bad? I'm going to go with good.
This is the most current you and well, I don't know what he means.
I thought he just meant that we're keeping up on the comments section, which I
Oh
think is him
yeah.
being. I thought he was being funny because I thought we were actually way behind at one point. But thank you if you were trying to be. Uh,
Yeah, I didn't quite understand that. Maybe current. Oh, yeah. Okay, I get it now. This took me a little while. I'm a slow
Gotcha.
learner.
Current as far as up to date on the comments. John H says, "Hey John, how you doing?"
Hey,
John H
John.
says, "I remember an SNL joke about Kathy Lee Gifford appearing on Just Shoot Me. The anchor joked that her husband Frank was often heard to say that around the house."
What? I don't. This is passing me up here. I got Just Shoot Me in SNL and Kathy Lee.
Apparently, Kathy Lee Gifford begged her husband to shoot her.
Oh,
The idea they didn't have a happy marriage.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Funny guy.
Uh,
Sorry, your humor was wasted on me. I totally went right over my head.
let's see. Oh, Tom Laramie says, speaking of Grasshopper, K. Luke from Kung Fu was Charlie Chan's number one son in the Charlie Chan movies.
Oh, really? I don't know who K. Luke was from Kung Fu. Which one
He
was he?
was one of the masters in Kung Fu.
Oh, okay. All right.
There were two masters, and I always get them mixed up. There was the Master Po. I
Yeah,
believe he was the
Master
blind one.
Po,
Yes.
and then the other one. I forgot the other guy's name, but yeah, the two main guys who instructed him in all of his flashbacks to the Shaolin Temple.
Oh, and John H just wants me to read this record. Frank begged someone to shoot him. So I had it
Oh,
backwards.
I
Um,
see.
the gist is they didn't have a happy marriage, but I guess apparently she was more antagonistic and aggravating than he was. So it was him. But I think either way works, John. But just as easy to get things right, as they say.
Mm.
Let's see. Keith E says, "See, yes, you've been keeping very current, which means they're telling answers down here about stuff you're discussing that you don't care for several minutes." I'm going to read that
Hmm.
one more time. I think Siri had a word there. I think the
Yeah.
gist of what he's saying is that people are afraid we don't care about what they're asking us. It's just we just haven't gotten to them yet. But let me try this one more again.
Yeah.
Yes, you've been keeping very current, which means they're telling answers down here about stuff you're discussing that you don't care for several minutes. Oh, I think it was sometimes people are actually answering the questions that you and I would have answered had we got to them
Yeah,
first.
right. I get it. Yeah. It's
Either
kind of,
way, I apologize.
no, no, listen, we do what we can do here. And part of this show is, we got to balance it out. I mean, we want to get as many comments as we can, but part of the comments is to have me and Thrash pontificate on those things, and then whatever guest we have as well. And it's kind of this balancing interaction act. And I I don't ever want to say, okay, Thrash, that's enough. Yeah, let's get to these comments. I don't want to do that. Or whoever the guest is, say, all right, that's enough. And I don't want to feel like I'm doing that either. So we get through as many comments as we can. And sometimes we can get through a lot of them when it's a slower night like tonight. And then sometimes when a guest comes on and it's like, 50 people, 25, 50 people on, then then it's more difficult because we want to talk about these things. So it's tough. I'm sorry, and as the channel grows, it's going to be even tougher. I'm going to try to do my best to keep the ball rolling with reading everything and stuff, but I got to stop even now. I'm going to make another point here, and that is kung fu. We talked about kung fu a little bit, and I mean, let me just say, as far as a '70s show that influenced me, the two shows that influenced me that changed the whole direction of my life was the movie Star Wars and the television show Kung Fu. I mean, I would not. I mean, I remember, and by the time I was watching Kung Fu, it was already in reruns. But I remember in like the '70s, I remember it was the '70s, watching Kung Fu and then jumping around pretending I was David Carradine, beating people up, trying to throw my kicks the best I can, even before I was even ever enrolled in a martial arts class. So I've got all three seasons on DVD. I loved Kung Fu. Um, even though David Carradine was never really that good at it, but I did like that. I did like the show a lot. Were you a fan, Thrash?
Of Kung Fu, one
Yeah.
of my
Then,
favorite shows.
oh, well,
I
right
love
on.
I love Kung Fu. I
Right
remember when it was
on.
on first run, but then I watched it reruns when I was in high school. But yeah, it's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah. Did you
Definitely.
watch any? Did you watch any of the reboots?
No,
They
I
were
kept it to the original.
They were terrible. The
Really?
reboots were terrible. Go
Then I'm
oh,
glad
sorry,
I
go on.
stuck.
Is that
Uh,
so
John Collins asks, "Is the night that Chicago died about the Democratic rioting during the Democratic conventions of '76 or '72?" It is my understanding that the whole thing was inspired by fantasies he had. The lead singer, whose name eludes me for the moment, but the lead singer was a huge fan of the Untouchables when he was a kid. And so what he did was he made up the song about various fantasies he had had about life in the Badland days of the gangster wars of that sort of the bootlegging era. Wasn't even particularly accurate. In fact, there is no east side of Chicago. The east side of Chicago is actually the bottom of Lake Michigan, but it sounded cool. The east side of Chicago. Daddy was a cop on the east side of Chicago. So,
wow.
yeah. Oh, and Mr. Keithy again is here. So it's kind of funny. I'm reading the comments to the questions you're talking about, but you don't get to those lines for another 4 or 5 minutes usually. But I know the answer. Yes, there was a certain amount of time dilation in these.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Let's see.
Mm.
What else we got going on here? Oh, we just did a jump here, so I'm just trying to. Oh, John H says, I remember a kid in grade school back in the '70s had a kung fu lunchbox.
Ooh, wow! I bet that's worth a pretty penny these days.
Oh, and he raises the neck. We've actually talked about this. Johnny says someone said Bruce Lee was supposed to star on Kung Fu.
That's a little bit of an overreach. That's a little bit of that's a legend that has a little bit of truth to it, but was not necessarily true. He was considered and he was rejected, and he was rejected from what I understand. The real truth is he was rejected not because he was Asian, but because of his accent. And people had a really hard time understanding him when he would talk fast. So, and or when he had a lot of dialogue, like lines of dialogue, it's difficult to they didn't want that for an American audience. And no, he did not think of kung fu. It was something else he thought of that the studios rejected at the same time they were coming up with the show Kung Fu. And there were some similarities, but the people swear that it really wasn't the same. I think Bruce Lee's show was supposed to be something in the modern era. And I think that, he believed that they just took his idea and then put it back in the old West. But the people that came up with it said, no, he's really kind of overreaching it. And that was promulgated by the movie Dragon, if you remember that movie back in 1993, which is the Bruce Lee story, which was not the Bruce Lee story. It is one of the worst. I love that movie because that movie got me into Bruce Lee, but it is one of the least accurate tellings of Bruce Lee that you can find out there.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great work of fiction, but it's about as historically accurate as Hogan's Heroes is to World War II.
Yeah, I would say I
I
would
mean,
say
we
that.
were fighting the Germans. But other than that,
Yeah, not
but
not
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, not I
it's
mean, he didn't write that book, the book Tao of Jeet Kune Do did not come out in his lifetime. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It shows him studying with Yip Man when he was like 6, and he didn't study with Yip Man till he was like 14. I mean, there were just so many inaccuracies in that movie.
he
Uh,
was concerned about a curse against the males in the Lee family, and his son did die under very mysterious circumstances.
yeah,
So that's a bit odd. You gotta give him that one.
yeah. I mean, it's not completely inaccurate. I mean, he did live in Hong Kong, and he did come over here to America, and he was born in America. I mean, those things are accurate. He did make Jeet Kune Do. Uh,
I, I,
yeah,
I believe the biggest similarity was both kung fu and the Bruce Lee incarnation would have both essentially been the fugitive.
yes, yeah, basically, yes.
Yeah.
That was a connecting kind of point, I believe.
But then
Uh,
a lot of shows were loosely adapted from the fugitive. So it's
There's a guy on that I listen to quite regularly called the Kung Fu Genius. I listen to his podcast quite a bit. Obviously, it's a martial arts podcast, but he does a whole thing on whether or not Kung Fu was really a ripoff of, uh, or whether or not Kung Fu really ripped Bruce Lee off, and that was a really good one. It was a really good episode.
oh,
All right,
I,
we can go.
I'm sorry, I just had a really good one. Then I got distracted. Here it
Ah.
is. I distract easily. Oh, the colors. Cindy D says,
Squirrel.
and I'm not going to do the voice. SNL did a whole thing about don't do the voice, but in the hot tub, gonna get wet. Eddie Murphy as James Brown in the hot tub, still laughing at that one. They were talking about the influence of Eddie Murphy and the one of those behind the scenes of comedy, and that really is the character that really made him. Cindy D, that was a great one.
Yeah.
You remember that one, don't you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a good one.
Let's see what else we got going on here. Uh oh, Tracy Ross says, "Remember, I am from Chicago. It's my hometown. Ever been to East Chicago?" Sorry.
Well, is the band? No, I don't want to sound stupid, but here I go. Okay, is the band Chicago from Chicago?
Yes. In
Okay.
fact, originally Chicago was known as the Chicago Transit Authority, and the Chicago Transit Authority sued them. That's why they had to change the name to just Chicago.
Just Chicago.
Just Chicago. Of course, and also Boston is from
Yeah.
Boston as well. In fact, I remember as a kid, one of my favorite lines in a Boston song was he goes dancing on the streets of Hyannis. I actually know the village green they were playing in when they were referring to that. And I always thought, oh, this is so cool. It's relevant to my life. I was like 11 at the time, so little things impressed me. John Doe says the Lee family actually sued the film studio that made the film Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, and the daughter never forgave them. I believe. I heard the daughter
Oh,
like, yeah.
did they sue them? Because I thought because it's based on the it's based on the book by Linda Lee. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, that's
Uh,
interesting. It's interesting.
Tom Laramie says, I think the family had a problem with the portrayal of Lee in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was the one the daughter was really, really
She was
angry
really
about.
upset about,
Really
but
about,
I mean,
yes.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the Lee estate, by the way. Yeah, I mean, they're trying to. His brother, Eric Lee, I think is his name, was trying to make a book about Bruce Lee. I mean, he grew up with Bruce Lee, and they're trying to stop him from doing it or using any Bruce Lee likenesses or anything like that. So yeah,
Why? What's under what theory?
they are. You'll have to look it up because they are just very stingy with the name. They want to make all the money that they can possibly make off of Bruce Lee. They don't want anything out there. They want to control the canon basically of Bruce Lee, and they just they are just like it's almost like, oh, so think of it like this. This will make sense to you. They're the Sharon Osbournes of heavy metal,
Mm.
of Ozzy and everything. You got people, like Jakey Lee. He says, "I will leave all the money for Bark at the Moon. I just want credit for what I did." And they basically said, "No, you're not getting any credit." It's the same kind of thing.
I'm with you. Or apparently, Julian Lennon, if he wants something from his father's estate, Yoko makes him buy it on the open market. And
Yeah,
he did this whole thing in an interview where he goes, he buys the merchandise with the money he receives, the stipend he gets from his father's estate. And then the money goes to his father's estate. So it's this really stupid cycle. You
yeah,
know, if it's a signed album from his father from when he was 2, give him the
yeah.
bloody album. You
Give
know,
them the dang money for sure. Jeez.
Let's see what we. Oh, Daryl Johnson. Daryl Johnson. Hey, Daryl. Daryl Johnson says a martial arts prodigy who emigrates from China in search of his sister, only to be sold to one of the most powerful thongs in China.
I guess this is a movie or something, or maybe that was the
Um,
premise
the, the
of
show.
I think
Oh,
that maybe that was the premise of Bruce Lee's.
The
Oh,
Warrior, set during the Tong Wars in the late 1870s, San Francisco. The series follows Ah Song.
mm.
I know very little Chinese and most of it's from Cantonese, so my pronunciation will probably be atrocious. Oh, Trathos Minus says, "Are you a black belt, Ian?"
Yes. Well, I mean, let me explain. So I did get a first degree black belt in a style called the White Dragon martial arts system, which was basically five animal form kung fu meets tong soo. And then after that, I'm an instructor. So certain styles don't have belts. So I'm an instructor or the equivalent of a black belt in Bruce Lee style and in Wing Chun Kung Fu. And I was um, I was an instructor for a little while in Russian martial arts, but you have to keep going up every year. And I just went up the one time and got passed, and I didn't want to keep going up there. And the highest degree that I got was from somebody who gave me my third degree black belt. I got it. He awarded to me, but you got to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. He's an eighth degree black belt. His name's James Woodson, and he is a two-time world champion. Uh, and and um, and he awarded me a third degree black belt, but I didn't learn his system. He just basically gave me a certificate and said, he said, you're as good as any third degree black belt that I've met. So he awarded me that belt. So that's more like an honorary belt than anything, but I'm the equivalent of a black belt in two styles, and I have a black belt in one style. And I have a blue belt in blue. I have a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu as well. So I've been around. I've been
Is
around
there
for
a
a while.
distinction between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and capoeira?
Oh yeah, huge,
There is,
huge. Yeah,
because they both come from
capoeiras.
Brazil.
They do. They both come from capoeira. So Brazilian jiu-jitsu is more like a ground art. You get somebody to the ground and you tangle them up and you choke them out and break their arm or whatever. You get them in arm locks and stuff. Capoeira is a lot of kicks. Capoeira is the one that looks like dancing, where they dance. They go, yeah, they do the dance thing and then they spin and kick, and they had to hide their martial art as far as I know, for some reason or something, that people didn't want them to know they're practicing martial arts, so they built it into a dance. So did Russian martial arts too, because when the communists took over Russia, they outlawed the martial arts. And
Hmm.
but they hit them in the dances. You can kind of see it in their dances, and when they go down and they come up and they do this stuff, that's a lot of that's the a lot of martial arts moves.
Huh, I'll
Um,
bet that.
so they hid that in a lot of those dances.
I'll bet that. Keith says, "You better start chatting it up. Pawns is almost here. Pawns is here." Dun,
Better
dun.
start. Well, I don't get it.
Oh, because I was catching up again. So he was like, "You better start chatting it up. Pawns is
Oh
almost
yeah.
here."
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, they were running out of time. Yes, Keith is a very witty person, so you have to keep up on his wit. Oh, John Collins says, "Bob, may I text you after the show?" You certainly may. Tracy Ross Myers says, "Ono is a bee."
Oh no, is a B. I don't get it.
Yoko Ono, and there's
Oh
a few more
yes,
letters after
yes.
that B.
I got it. I got it. Yoko Ono. Yes, and so's the Lee estate.
Oh, there's a whole lot of talk about Michael Jackson, but I'm going to read this one in the in because nobody remembers it. Dirty Diana.
I remember that. I remember. You know why I remember that? Because it had Steve Stevens playing guitar, and
It
Steve
did. I
Stevens.
did not know
Yeah,
that. I
yeah,
did
that's
not
the guy
know
who
that.
plays the guitar on that, where he's doing that. Steve Stevens is one of my all-time favorite, without a doubt, guitarist. Him and Randy Rhoads are like, well, there are other people, George Lynch and people like that, but man, I'm telling you, Steve Stevens is one of the best guitarists ever.
And Tom the Hungry Jerk says, "My uncle threw Jay Giles' band out of his cab because they smelled. I can guess what they smelled like."
Mm.
Let's see. Um, Emily Miller says, "I love all of MJ's songs. How could one not?"
I love's a pretty strong word for me.
Well,
I do love a few of them. I was a big Michael Jackson song. I would say I was a huge Michael. That was like the last big band I was into before I was introduced to Iron Maiden. Like not band, but person, like musical artist that I was into. I
I
loved it.
one
My
could
friend,
actually consider Michael Jackson a musical group because he's sort of an entity. He always had the entourage, and there was
right?
always the sound. So yeah,
Well,
I'd buy
Thriller
that.
is the number one album of all time, isn't it? Is Thriller is the
It
number
was. I believe it's been dethroned over the years, but it was.
by who? Who do you throw? I
I
know
think
that.
Janet Jackson did actually.
I don't know, man. I think that's the number one of all time. Maybe I know that Bad got overthrown by, or was it Bad or one of them got overthrown by Nirvana. Michael Jackson was number one, and then Nirvana took over. But that wasn't Thriller, though. That wasn't. I mean, I don't know. Will have to look that up. But I do think Thriller is still the number one selling album of all time. But
This
I
one's
could be wrong.
sad. Another one says, "My dad had his throat slit when he was a cab driver. Drove himself to the hospital."
Oh wow! Yikes! Sorry to hear that.
Oh, yeah, I'm
I
very
hope
sorry. Yeah.
he lived, obviously. I hope he did. Whatever. Yeah. They didn't get the jugular. They must not have slit through the jugular or just nicked it. Because if your jugular is gone, you're gone within you'll lose consciousness within a minute and a half and you're dead within 3 minutes.
Yeah, but it's a very sad story. I'd like to think
Yeah.
he was okay. A very sad
Yeah.
story. Oh, Sparadia One says, Emily, I think we must have been friends in the '80s. LOL. Sparadia also likes Michael Jackson, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, and
Oh,
a lot of stuff.
DJ says he didn't leave the meter running, did he? Wow. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh at that, Cindy. Uh, oh, Emily says, if hadn't looked down, he wouldn't have survived. Oh, so that's why they missed it. When the person went to cut, he went like this. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. Yikes. Yikes.
Oh, and Lance Chafin says, that's City D. I think the Eagles did. I'm not
I
sure
think
what
the
they did.
Eagles did what? What is there something above it?
I was just looking to that. Uh, I'm not sure. I was actually going to do this one, Lance Chafin, Pat Benatar.
Oh, yeah. I was a fan. I
Huge.
yeah, she was awesome. She was incredible.
Oh, Steve in the house,
Hey,
the life and set ending.
Steve,
Hey, Steve.
glad you could join us.
Let's see who else we got here. Tom the Hungry Jerk says, I dated a girl whose dad once fought Chuck Norris for the world championship, but lost.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Yeah, Chuck Norris was awesome. He
I
still is.
know.
I don't know about
He's
was. He still is.
he's gonna be pushing 70 now too.
Yeah, I think he's pushing 80.
He could be. He
I
could
think
be,
he's
but it's
pushing
just
80.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he was one of the people who was responsible actually for bringing Brazilian jiu-jitsu to America. He really promoted it. He was one of the people who really enjoyed Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Bought one of the guys, Jack Machado, bought him his first studio. So yeah. Anyway, go. Yeah.
Lisa Fields in the house says,
Hi,
hi everyone. Lisa, hi to
hi,
you.
Lisa.
Oh, and Ellen Lewis says Thriller is still number one at 70 million copies. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought it'd been deposed, but I will defer to your um
I don't think Janet Jackson
knowledge.
sold 70 million copies. I don't know anybody who sold. I mean, 70 millions. Like, yeah, that's crazy.
I was misinformed. Every now and then I get a wrong piece of information, I must confess. Hey, it happens. It
Well,
happens.
how many times have I been wrong just this evening? I've said something stupid. It
More than
happens to
I
all
have
of
in
us.
total.
Oh gosh. Boom,
I
boom.
tease. I tease. Let's see what else we got. Oh, Chuck Norris was apparently born in 19 John H says was born in 1940, which would make him 82 this year. The
Oh,
mind boggles.
yeah.
The mind boggles.
He's
He's older
still
than my
doing it
mom.
too. That's why I love
Yeah.
doing martial arts too, because it just kind of keeps you young. Keeps you young, flexible, kind of you keeps your strength up. A lot of people who do martial arts live for a really long time.
Let's see. Oh, hang on a second. Now, see, Cindy D says when we were saying that she said the Eagles did, and we said what?
Oh,
Dethroned MJ as the number one album sold thrash. So Emily Miller is saying that it still stands to this day, and Cindy D is
I
suggesting that it was the Eagles,
I think, well, look, we got to take these things in context. Did the Eagles dethrone an album? Maybe.
or
Just
a,
like
yeah.
just like just like I know Nirvana dethroned the number one hit. They took over. Michael Jackson was number one and Nirvana came in at number one. I know that for sure. But did they dethrone Thriller? That's the question. Has anybody sold more copies of one album than Thriller? Not the whole discography. You know what I mean? Not like everything the Eagles did against one album that Michael Jackson did. I'm talking, is there one album out there that sold more copies than Thriller? And I don't think
that
there is. I think
that
Thriller is still the number one album of all time.
I think you have a point there. I think that may be it. Oh, Sarita Admin in the house. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm
Hello,
late.
Serena. How are you? So glad to see you.
Uh, ah, and of course, the number one. Emily Miller says, "White Christmas." Bing Crosby is the number one single. Yes, it remains the number one single of all time.
So I just Googled it. It says Michael Jackson's Thriller estimated to have sold 70 million copies worldwide as the best-selling album. As the first thing that comes up. So I mean, obviously there could be mistakes on everything, but yeah, I don't think any one album has ever sold more than that one album. So, yeah.
And John Collins is letting me off the hook. John Collins says, "Bob, your ironic funny about my left foot was hilarious, my friend. Very good use of disabled humor. You are a pro, my friend. Thank you. I was afraid I might have been pushing the envelope a little with that one. Thank you for being the sport that you are." Oop, I just jumped again. Um,
Well, if the comments are, I know that. Go ahead. Let's do this
oh,
one.
Zupalik says, "I don't believe in any of their statistics." Yes, you can use statistics to prove anything.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Well, that's actually the problem with statistics, and I learned how to do this when I was in poli sci school. You can actually manipulate statistics to create the outcome you want.
Yeah, but
It's
this is
not all
not.
that difficult.
I
Yeah.
Yeah, statistics. Yes, statistics. Yes, but
Mhm.
we're asking a question: how many albums were sold? We're
So
not
yes.
asking, percentage of this over against this or whatever. The statistics can be, but I mean, you can't either something sold this many albums or did not sell this many albums. That's the kind of thing that but I do know that it's true though. I don't know if you knew this or not, Thrash, but you know that 60% of all statistics are made up.
That's an old one. That's
I
an old one.
know, I
Yeah.
can't help it.
Hey, did you? Here's one for you. This one terrified me the first time I heard it. Do you know that 3 out of 4 people comprise 75% of the population?
Oh no. Really?
It boggles the mind.
It is.
Or my other favorite one is: do you know that 100% of the people responding answer polls?
Oh, there's this show out there. It was an internet show a long time ago. And they stopped doing it. They started replacing it, but it was called Enter the Dojo. And it was by this guy named Master Ken, who was an 11th degree black belt in his own style. And,
Wow.
this guy got so famous. It's called his style is called a Meridote, and it's a joke. This is a joke series.
Oh,
It's so
okay.
funny.
Oh, okay, good.
But he got, I mean, he literally got so famous off of this that they have him do seminars and stuff as this character, Master Ken. And he was up there, and there was all these tables, of people all around him, and he was giving these statistics out. He's like, he's like, so many people. It's true statistically that so many people are going to be assaulted in the U.S. It goes, that's 2 people at every other table in this place. Anyway, yeah, Master Cat, Enter the Dojo, one of my favorite web series ever. Yeah, it's hilarious. All right.
So
Well, I think we're gonna. I
it's
know that.
winding down here, I think.
I know that Serena just came in, but sorry, we're about ready to wind down. You have to watch it on the replay. I hope you do, and please don't forget to hit the like button, hit the share button. I'm up to 603, and you, my friend, hit 200 today.
Yes, I'm actually at 201 as we speak.
Oh, right
So
on.
yeah, and that was a huge milestone, and I want to thank every single one of you. Oh, and a little more shameless self-promoting, if you'll indulge me, Mr. Ian.
Sure.
I'm also now on Facebook.
Oh, you are.
I'm now on Facebook, so
All
you
right.
can actually follow me there and message me and just sort of keep up to date with other stuff I got going on my channel
Is
right
it
on Facebook.
is it Thrash Pondo Ponds?
Yeah, it's the exact same name,
All right.
Thrash Pondo Ponds. So just go into Facebook, look up Thrash Pondo Ponds. Some of you already have. The rest of you are always welcome to.
Right. I'm on Facebook too. I'm on you can find Retro Serial on Facebook now. So if you're interested, let me know. I mean, look me up on Facebook, also on all the media. I'm on Twitter and whatever those other things are. I'm typing it in right now. Crash Pondo Ponds. Let's see here. There you are. Oh, can you can't like the page though.
You can't.
No, you got to go into that. There's no like button.
Strange.
There's no there's no like button on it.
Huh.
Sorry, I was going to give you a like.
Well, you can like one of the pictures of something in it.
Oh,
I know.
can I? No, it only says I
Oh,
can
you want to know why?
why?
I haven't accepted you as a friend yet. Once I go on, I'll accept you as a friend.
Well,
I thought I sent
I'm only
you
on
a
a
friend request.
I'm only on there on a business. I didn't see it. You have to
Oh.
go to
You didn't get a friend request from me?
Retro Sierra. I didn't see one.
I'll try again. I'm getting new with this newfangled internet thing.
Yeah, it's a hassle. I think it's at the end of its course.
Yeah, it's
I think
come and gone.
it's gonna go away one of these days. It's not the
Go
future. I
go
wouldn't
back to the
invest in
Pony
it.
Express, you know.
I would I if it were me, I'd invest in Atari and ColecoVision. So
Pong.
and Pong. All right, guys. What do you got going on over at your channel?
Well, I just put out a poll saying what would people like to see for the 200th celebration, and most people are suggesting a live chat. So I'm probably going to set up a live chat in the not too distant future. I'm also in the spirit of Halloween. I've been doing a lot of Halloweeny stuff, and apart from that, I'm looking into doing something on this Halloween on the 31st. I haven't quite figured out what it is,
Mm,
but it's probably gonna be a surprise. But I'll keep everybody on top of it with my Facebook.
cool, cool. Well, I am gonna try my very best this Thursday to film and put out. It's going to be an exception to my honeycomb hideout rule because it's so close to Halloween. But I am going to do. I don't normally do anything like this, but you'll understand. I'm going to do, and I'm going to keep it to 3 facts, just so I can get it filmed real quick and get it out. And that is, I am going to do 3 things you didn't know about the monster cereals. You know, the Count Chocula, the Frankenberry, the Booberry.
The Blueberry.
I found out some very, and then the Wolfman one and the Mummy one as well. I found out some things about it, and I'm gonna throw one in there that's a little bit of a surprise too. That's gonna be number one. So that's what I'm gonna work on. Hopefully, I will have it filmed, edited, and out before Halloween. So that's my horror light. That's about as deep as I'm gonna go. So because I love those cereals. I don't know if you grew up eating them, but I love those cereals. So all right, everyone. Take care. Stay retro. We will talk to you again next week.
Peace.